ahead and get started. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to our third meeting between Fairfax County Public Schools and POAC. And again, just wanted to thank the leadership of POAC for these continued opportunities to come together and just share information, answer questions that your membership might have, and then respond to any questions or inquiries that you have in advance of the meeting. And so you were able to share some things that you wanted me to speak to tonight and share a little bit of information. So I'm prepared to do that. And it looks like, well, I had a few more members of our Fairfax County team here before the last couple of days. And I see we've got Lori Creighton who's here on our team. So I'm going to let Lori introduce herself to everybody.
Hello, everybody. Lori Creighton. I'm the Senior Manager for Behavior Intervention Services. It's so nice to see you again.
And just full transparency, when we set up this meeting, I forgot that we have a team of our central office staff that are going to Utah for the annual CEC conference. And so we have a few that would have been here this evening, but they're en route and getting ready to head out to Utah for a week full of learning. So we're excited for them. But that's all right. We'll continue with our meeting here tonight. I've got some information I want to share, and then anything that we can't answer and we need to have some follow-up, I'm happy to do that. So with that, I will go ahead and I'm share my screen and just start and kick us off with some information that was requested by the leadership of POAC. So give me 1 second. Okay. All right. Can you see my PowerPoint okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Perfect, perfect. All right. So we'll skip the welcome slide. We already had our little introductions here. And I'll go ahead and start and talk a little bit about the FCPS budget and a budget update. And I know that especially for this group, a lot of questions come to mind related to students with disabilities and whether or not the budget process for this school year is going to impact any of our supports or services as we move into next school year with the proposed budget that's gone through. And I'm happy to say that Dr. Reed's proposed budget that has now been advertised by the school board and approved late February to move forward in the process does not include any specific cuts to special education, no cuts that would impact our services or supports that we provide to students. So that's really good news. And I'm also happy to report that there were some questions when we started this budget process related to the special education department chairs. And I know that last year we were talking about at this same time potential cut to those positions, and they were actually initially cut as part of last year's budget, and then they were reinstated. And I'm happy to say that moving into next school year, at least in the advertised budget, they do include those special education. The budget does include funding for the special education department chair positions. I'm going to open up the link on this slide, and just so you all know, when you get the slide deck, I'll also send this slide deck to everyone. You'll be able to access all of the links in the PowerPoint, but this link will take you directly to some information related to the budget. So it's the weekly update from Fairfax County from the week of March 4th, but it starts with information related to the budget. And so the FY27 advertised budget was voted by the school board. They voted to adopt it at their February 26th meeting. And there's more information here related to some of the feedback sessions. And so I'm just going to scroll through quickly, but if you get to this site, there are going to be lots of opportunities for community feedback. And so this website will show you exactly where you can share your feedback, either with the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors website if you wanted to share feedback with the county, our county partners, with the Board of Supervisors. And then Dr. Reed is also going to be having some community conversations so that individuals can provide and share their insights, their thoughts, and ideas related to the budget, really from March through the middle or toward the end of April. So there are going to be 5 specific dates that information sessions will be held and Q&A sessions with Dr. Reed. So again, just a great opportunity for people to get engaged and get involved. And then the other information I was going to share, there's a link where you can read more about the FY27 advertised budget. And so if you click on that link, this will again take you to more information related to the budget. But I did want to point out, I'm not going to read all of this, but there's these 3 FY27 at a glance actions that are sustaining excellence. And so I wanted to point everyone's attention to this first bullet where it does include information that this budget, this adopted budget, does include fully restoring the special education department chair positions, as well as the advanced academic resource teacher positions at non-Title I schools. So I did want to share that because I mentioned it, but it is on the county website related to some of the highlights of the budget. So again, the link is in the PowerPoint. So I'm going to go ahead and close out these and go back to the PowerPoint slide. And that's information related to the FCPS budget. And again, if you've got additional questions after we're done presenting, you can go ahead and ask questions. All right, another area where I wanted to share some information was related to our autism inclusion plan. And this is a plan that I may have referenced in a previous meeting, but didn't really share a lot of information. So there was a request from the POAC leadership that I share a few more details about this plan. So many of you probably know that in Fairfax County Public Schools, the last couple of years, linked to the strategic plan, Fairfax County has undergone a division-wide inclusion initiative. And we partnered with a couple of consultants division-wide to be able to bring a lot of professional development and resources and training. And it's a phased plan, 3 years, where schools were phasing into this development, professional development, as a school team and really diving more deeply into their data related to the number of students who are included in general education settings, and then looking for places where they could increase opportunities for kids to be able to participate with their same age peers in those general education settings. And so while that division-wide inclusion work was happening, we also, in our Department of Special Services, realized that for students with autism, we wanted to provide some additional resources, supports, professional development that we felt would really equip the teachers who work with students in PAC, preschool autism classrooms, and EAC, enhanced autism classrooms, to be able to successfully, where appropriate, include those students more throughout their school day into general ed settings. One thing that I did want to mention with all of our inclusion work, whether it's our division-wide work or our autism work, for any student who has an IEP and is looking to increase the amount of inclusion time, it always flows through the IEP process. Parents always have a voice in the decision-making process. There have been some misconceptions that Fairfax County Public Schools is doing away with all of our self-contained programming, our continuum of services, and we've never said that. When we started our inclusion work, we've always maintained that Fairfax County, actually required by and through IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, and through the Code of Virginia, we're required to provide a continuum of supports and services in our service delivery options for students with disabilities. And that includes, of course, students with autism. So we're not looking to eliminate our PAC classrooms or our enhanced autism classrooms, really none of our special education programming, but we do have a critical lens through the IEP process with families to be able to look for those opportunities, to be able to provide to all of our students for time, increased time in general ed settings. And I'll talk a little bit about some of the thinking around our autism inclusion plan as I go through this presentation. A little bit about the two consultants. Now, these are two different consultants from our division-wide work. These are two consultants that we specifically have been working with related to our autism inclusion work. And just to sort of set the stage for our two autism consultants, these two consultants are individuals who had worked with Dr. Reed, our superintendent of schools, when she was superintendent in Washington State. And she had a good working relationship with these two individuals, and I'll share more about their background. But in Washington State, they had a lot of success in their inclusion efforts related to students with autism. And so Dr. Reed recommended that we connect with Nancy Pack, and then I'll introduce Jane Prine with you in a couple of minutes. But Nancy and Jane have been the two consultants we've been primarily working with about a year now. We started to engage with them last spring. And so here's a little bit of information related to Nancy. Nancy has, of course, a very strong background in school leadership. She actually has a background as a speech language pathologist, and then she became a school administrator and she worked in the public school system, then became a principal, a superintendent of schools. But specifically to the inclusion work, the state of Washington, the school division that she worked with at the time partnered with the University of Washington, this third bullet, and her school in Washington State, Nancy's, was one of three selected as a pilot site for this project, Project Data, Developmentally Appropriate Treatment for Autism. And this project really centered around inclusion for students with autism. And partnering with the University of Washington and going through this process at her school, she found great success for being able to increase opportunities for inclusion at her school. And then she actually was asked by the state of Washington, Washington State, to serve as one of 12 statewide trainers, really tasked with bringing this effective autism programming across the state of Washington. So Nancy has a lot of great knowledge, expertise around working with students with autism and supporting inclusion for students with autism. So that's a little bit about Nancy. I'm going to then talk a little bit about Jane. Dr. Jane Prine, again, lots of experience, and really she has been a principal, a superintendent of schools. I've actually 4 school divisions. And Dr. Prine's expertise is around systems change. So while Nancy has a lot of in-depth knowledge and expertise around supports and services for students with autism, Jane partners with Nancy around working with school divisions that really need to look at their systems and how can we bring about systemic change in areas to help support greater inclusion for many kids. So I'll just give you one example of what we're working through with Jane. We know that right now in Fairfax County Public Schools, not every school has PAC programming and or enhanced autism programming. And so many students who go through the IEP process, and when they receive their programming at either a PAC or EAC classroom, those families and those students may not be placed at their neighborhood school. And so we have a lot of feeder schools or feeder sites where students might have to travel a little bit of a distance outside of their neighborhood school or community to be able to attend a different school that has either a PAC or an enhanced autism classroom. We have some students, again, because of our transportation challenges, our facilities challenges, and our capacity challenges that may not even travel to the closest school near their home that has either PAC or enhanced autism classroom programming because the classrooms might be full. And so we have some kids that are not only leaving their base school, they might be actually traveling outside of their pyramid within their region. And in a few instances, we have kids who are being transported even outside of their region to participate in a PAC or an EAC classroom. So Nancy, working with our team and working with facilities and transportation, one of the systems changes that we're looking at is trying to make sure that when we open up new programs, when we close programs, when we're looking at putting kids in either PAC or enhanced autism programming, we are aligning those kids as close as we can to their neighborhood school. Obviously, to be educated with their peers in their neighborhood school is always our first option. But then, as a second option, we want those kids within the same, at a minimum, within the same pyramid structure, so that when those kids graduate from elementary school and move to middle school, they're feeding to a middle school within their same pyramid. So they're not only going to attend middle school with the same peers that they have spent their elementary years with, but they'll also feed to the same middle school that peers from their neighborhood school would be attending. And so, again, we wanted to help maintain those social relationships and all of the community building that's part of your school experience for these students with autism. Because when you're being educated outside of your pyramid, outside of your region, and then you're being transitioned to a middle school, you may go into that middle school setting not knowing a single student. You may go into a high school setting not knowing a single student. And really, a lot of the relationships that those kids have built through the years can, in an instant, disappear. So that's one example of some systems changes that we're really trying to implement. And so Jane is really helping us with not only that, but some other considerations as we move this work forward. So, a little bit about the plan. First, we always start with the why. And as I mentioned last spring, Jane and Nancy had a chance to visit Fairfax County Public Schools. We toured about 10 different schools, and we really not only focused on classrooms that had students with autism, like enhanced autism or PAC, but we wanted to give them sort of a feel for all of our special education programming. So we were visiting schools with comprehensive services sites for students with social and emotional and behavioral challenges, students in intellectual disability or intellectual disability severe classrooms, um, as well as students with learning disabilities and how we program for them. So we really wanted to let them see what our programming looked like in Fairfax County. And after that visit, we had opportunities to really meet with all of the administrators and have some conversations in those schools, and really started digging into a little bit of our least restrictive environment data as well. And so we knew that our inclusion data for autistic children really needed some improvement. And I'll share one data point with you on the next slide. Um, but as I mentioned, Nancy and Jane, they were really brought into Fairfax County to help us to identify what areas we would need to change and then the types of changes or shifts that we would need to make as a county for this to be successful. And so that's when we started the conversations. What grew from that spring of visits was collaborating with Nancy and Jane to develop a plan of action that's going to help move our inclusion work forward for students in PAC and in enhanced autism classrooms. Here's the data point I wanted to share with you. So this data was pulled in the fall, and I just wanted to share with you, this is least restrictive environment data. So the state of Virginia requires us to be able to report data back related to the numbers of students who are included in general education classrooms for certain percentages of time during their school day. And so when I pulled this data, I want you to focus your attention on the rectangle box on the left with the blue border. In the fall at that time, we had a little bit over 1,500 students, really kindergarten through grade 6, that are in enhanced autism classrooms. So this specific data set is specifically for students in enhanced autism classrooms. So K through 6, because our enhanced autism model does not run grades 7 through 12. So I pulled this 1,528 students in enhanced autism classrooms. And then if you go to the right, I wanted to share the three data points that we provide information to the state. So the first data point is the percent of students who have more than 80% of their time in regular or general ed classrooms. Okay. And out of those 1,528 students in enhanced autism classrooms, 33 of them, so a little bit over 2%, actually had 80% or more of their time during the day in the general education setting. I want to flip all the way to the right because that third data point is the percent of students who have less than 40% of their time in the general ed setting. And that's really the majority of students in enhanced autism. 1,233 students, or a little bit under 81% of our students in enhanced autism classrooms, are in that self-contained setting more than 40% of their day. And that data point in the middle, that 262 kids, those are kids, 17.15%, in enhanced autism classrooms that spend between 40 and 80 or 40 and 79% of their school day in general education settings. And so now if you look below, that first box below, indicator 5, this is again data that we report to the VDOE. These are those students who are included in the regular classroom 80% or more of the day. The VDOE target for school divisions across the state is 74.1%. And the Fairfax County percentage, again, it's very specific to our self-contained programming for enhanced autism, is 2.16%. And then indicator B, those students who are included in regular classrooms less than 40% of the day, the VDOE target is 7.9%, and we've got 80.69% of those kids that are in that classroom less than 40% of their day. And so we do realize, though, that our enhanced autism programming is very specialized programming. So we're not expecting a majority of those kids to be spending 80% or more of their day in the general ed classroom. But we certainly believe as a school division that we can get more or less than 81% of them moving toward general education inclusion between maybe 40 and 79% of their day. So really what we're trying to do with our efforts ultimately is to be able to look at each individual student and where appropriate, be able to make IEP team decisions that will be able to have them included for more time during their day. But in order for this to be successful, it comes with a lot of support, a lot of training, a lot of professional development, and a lot of conversations. Because in many ways, inclusion work is not easy work, but we know that it's important work. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about the benefits. And these benefits to inclusion for students with disabilities in general um, is really powerful, and it's based on research. And so I just wanted to share, without going into too much detail, some of the benefits. So we talk about the social and communication benefits, giving those students with disabilities opportunities to be in those classrooms with their peers for a lot of peer modeling, to be able to create and maintain friendships and a sense of belonging within the school building, within the school community, and to give them real world practice. So being able to build skills that they're ultimately going to be using in the real world. And so this gives them some additional opportunities for both social and communication benefits. The second area is our academic and cognitive benefits. So again, research bears out that as we place higher expectations on students, and we see higher academic achievement for many of them. So raising the bar in terms of the rigor of the curriculum, having those students with disabilities in the general ed setting where they have access to experts. And when I say experts, I'm talking about the general ed teacher who has that expertise in the curriculum and being able to provide and expose those students to that general ed SOL curriculum as appropriate, and or the VAP curriculum, the adapted curriculum as well. Many of them receive that curriculum in the self-contained setting, but also opening them up to observational learning within that classroom as well. And then the last area is the community-wide benefits, reducing stigma for those students and preparation for life. But we know that inclusion is crucial because it provides the most natural and effective environment for young students with autism to acquire social, communication, and academic skills they're going to need for long-term success, independence, and a genuine sense of belonging. So that's a little bit about the why and the benefits of this inclusion work. As we've worked with Nancy and Jane, we've identified a number of areas where we're going to have to elevate some inclusive practices. So these are areas that we know in our training and in our professional development, our teachers are going to need support. Our general education teachers, our special education teachers, really any teacher who comes in contact with all of our students with disabilities, whether you're a paraprofessional, a related service provider. This is information that's really important. And so I've just bulleted a few things out here that the professional development plan and this inclusion plan is going to include in terms of some of our practices that we're trying to elevate. So again, without going into a lot of detail, making sure that we're fostering that culture of inclusion. So deepening the understanding we have of the social and community integration for all of our students. We want to maximize for all of our students authentic peer interactions. So we want to intentionally structure opportunities for support within natural peer groups. So uh, again, that might look like working in that self-contained setting and then having students to be able to generalize some of the skills that they've learned into that general ed setting within a natural peer group. Promoting equity and belonging, so ensuring that students attend their neighborhood school. I talked about that a little bit when I talked about some of our systems change that we're working through. And then we're trying to enhance independence for these kids through fading of prompts. So refining our use of prompts and really trying to shift from adult reliance to more student self-management, self-advocacy, self-regulation. Those are important skills. It's not just taking kids and putting them in a seat in a general ed classroom. Inclusion's not about a seating chart. Inclusion's about preparing these students and providing them with the skills that they're going to need to be engaged, to be motivated, to be happy, and to become self-reliant and be able to sort of shift that responsibility for learning onto themselves instead of the adults who support these kids. A few other things that I wanted to mention. We're going to be designing for engagement. So we're going to strategically be developing classroom activities that are going to encourage positive and active involvement from all students. Integrate communication naturally. So we're going to embed communication instruction within the flow of the general ed curriculum and typical peer interactions. We're going to help students, as I mentioned, to build self-regulation skills. We want to prioritize student agency, building in their strengths, their preferences, choice to drive instruction and build that meaningful independence within general ed settings. And along the way, we want to help teach adaptability and flexibility using visual, social stories as tools. I know Lori Creighton, who's on the call, has been very engaged with schools around the unstuck and on target work and teaching those skills of flexibility, those executive functions. That's going to be an important piece of being able to support students as they're moving into general ed settings and they're trying to generalize skills that they've learned in that self-contained setting. So, a little bit about the plan. The plan is a 7-month implementation cycle plan. So, we've created with our consultants 7 distinct phases that sort of serves as a roadmap or a blueprint for a school to be able to walk through and prepare their community, their parents, their kids, their staff for the successful inclusion of students with autism. And so we've aligned each month of the plan to some targeted high leverage practices for inclusion. And then every month includes some specific actions. So we have 10 pilot schools that began this work a couple of months ago. And I'll just give you an example of the first training or the kickoff training that we did with schools. That was our starting point. We had these schools start with a simple self-assessment. We gave them some self-assessment tools around their readiness for inclusion. We've talked a little bit with them about their starting place or their starting point as a school and a school community. Building on that, we started to share with them information about students with autism, some of the unique characteristics and supports that those kids are going to need to be successful in general education settings. Um, One of the things that we're going to be doing next Monday, which is our next or our second month in this phased work with these 10 schools, is we're going to be now starting to include our teachers, our PAC teachers and our enhanced autism teachers, and we're going to be sharing with them information about how we have conversations with the families of these students. Have them start to look at their classrooms and think of a few students who they think might be a good starting place, a good fit and match to look at some increased inclusion time. We're going to be digging into the IEP goals for those kids. Do we need to craft goals a little bit differently and align them to the goals that we have for those kids in an inclusive setting? So the parents will become involved through the IEP process and looking and preparing those kids. Looking at data to drive or inform decisions about a student's readiness to be able to spend time in a general ed setting. Like I said, it's not just about changing a seating chart, it's really about making sure that the kids are prepared and we've got goals in their IEP that align to what we're trying to do through this work. And so we're really excited to start engage our teachers. And then later this spring, we're going to start bringing in the general ed teachers. And then for this 7-month cycle, we're going to run out of months before the end of this school year, but we're picking right up in September with these 10 schools where at the beginning of the school year, they're going to start some of the implementation process and begin to include some of these students into the general ed setting. Some of them are doing it already. So, many of these enhanced autism classrooms, as you looked at the LRE data, they've already got kids that are accessing the general education setting. But we're looking to increase where appropriate for other kids. And so we're going to be working to elevate these practices for students in PAC and enhanced autism. After these 10 schools walk through this 7-phased process, beginning next year, we're going to scale up and we're going to increase pretty significantly training and supports the same 7-month cycle for about the remaining half of our PAC and EAC classroom teachers and schools. And then the third year, so that'll be school year 27-28, we're going to bring the rest of those schools on board through this specific plan targeting the professional development for them. And so I know this is a lot of information, but I just wanted to sort of give you a general outline of the plan and what it's going to look like for the next few years in Fairfax County. So we had some next steps that we identified as we're working with our 10 pilot schools. And so back in December, we shared the plan with all of the region leadership and the specific administrators from the 10 schools that were chosen. We did hold a kickoff meeting with the school leadership teams in January, and then we began that implementation with the school leadership teams in February. We then had an opportunity to share the plan with school instructional teams. So that's happening, as I mentioned, on Monday, March 16th. That's when we're first going to start introducing the instructional staff. And then for these 10 schools, the implementation cycle is really going to flow from March through June, and then we're going to pick that up again in September. And then what I've listed here for you are the 10 schools that are part of the pilots. We wanted to make sure that we had each region represented in the schools that we chose. Many of the schools do have both PAC programming and enhanced autism programming. So again, we wanted to get schools that had a mix of classrooms. Some of them have more classrooms and some just have a couple of classrooms. But again, we wanted every region in the county to be invested in this work and their leadership, their region leadership teams, to be knowledgeable and aware of what we're doing so that as we scale this up, this is not going to be new to the region leadership teams. And we'll have principals who've walked through this that can serve as mentors, coaches, uh, individuals to share their positive experiences with their principals within their same region as we scale this work up. So we were very intentional and purposeful about picking schools in all 6 regions to start this work. Okay, so I know that's a lot about the inclusion plan, but just wanted to, again, be able to share a little bit of information with you. And then the last thing that I wanted to share with you is a little bit of information related to our benchmark advanced curriculum, which is our basal for elementary for language arts, and the writing component that has been introduced as part of this curriculum. So I've put 3 bullets in here, and I'm not an expert on benchmark. I haven't had the training myself, but I've collaborated with our friends from instructional services and then our program manager, Jugnu Agrawal from our Department of Special Services to share this information here. So part of the benchmark curriculum includes explicit manuscript handwriting instruction provided in grades K through 1, 2 to 3 times a week with additional opportunities to practice handwriting throughout the week and during independent work. And then in grade 2, students continue with manuscript practice during the first semester and then transition into learning cursive in the second semester as aligned with the Virginia Standards of Learning. And then in grades 3 through 5, cursive handwriting is addressed in lesson 3 each week to provide students with the opportunity to practice cursive writing with the practice pages from Benchmark Universe, which is part of the curriculum. So again, this is sort of the handwriting component that's part of our basal, and it sort of walks you through from kindergarten through grade 5 and how this is addressed throughout the curriculum. I probably, outside of these 3 bullets, won't be able to answer a lot of additional questions, but I'm happy to write down some questions if anyone has any, and be sure that I can get the information to everyone. And then the last slide I wanted to share before we stop the recording and open it up for questions is information, related to our special education family conference. So we did have a change in date that has recently been advertised. The original date was a date set in March. We had opened it up for registration. We had a number of people who registered, and then for logistical reasons, we needed to shift the date of the conference. And so we have begun advertising, and registration is in full swing for the Special Education Family Conference, which is now going to be held Saturday, April 18th at Marshall High School, same location as we were going to hold it in March. And so the conference is going to be held from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. And we're really excited about our keynote speaker, Dr. Shelley Moore. And I encourage you, if you want to learn a little bit more about Shelley Moore, you can go to our conference webpage, which I've linked here in this slide. And so there's a little bit more information about Shelley Moore. But if you just did a Google search for Shelley Moore and you wanted to watch a couple of her videos on YouTube, that's fun to do as well. It'll give you a little bit more insight into Shelley Moore. She's done some training with Fairfax County public school teachers going through our division-wide inclusion work. She was actually one of the keynotes at our leadership kickoff earlier in the school year, and really provides um, a compelling argument for inclusion for students with disabilities. And so we're really excited to have Shelley Moore speaking at the conference. There's some QR codes for registration and to learn more. But again, if you just click on if you're not good with QR codes and you just click the link that says conference webpage, that'll bring you to registration and more information about the conference. So again, very excited to have that conference in April. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to go ahead and stop our recording as well, and then we'll open things up for some